The day everything changed. February 14th, 2018. Valentine's Day. A day meant to be about love, promises, and new beginnings. But for Patrick De La Cerda, a 25-year-old man living in Deltona, Florida, it became the day his life was stolen. That morning, around 7:15 a.m., Patrick walked to the front door of his home. The doorbell rang. He opened it, and in the next heartbeat, a single gunshot pierced through his chest. Patrick collapsed on the front steps. The neighbors heard the loud, sharp crack of the gunshot. By the time they rushed outside, he was already lying in a pool of blood. Emergency services arrived almost immediately. There was no sign of a struggle, no broken locks, no forced entry. The door was slightly ajar, as if Patrick had recognized the person on the other side. Whoever came that morning didn't need to break in. They came to kill. Patrick wasn't just any young man. He was engaged to Jessica Devnani, the woman he loved deeply. They had been planning their wedding, picking rings, imagining a future together. Jessica had woken up that day thinking she was going to surprise him with a romantic Valentine's gesture. Instead, she received a call that shattered her entire world. As detectives from Volusia County began combing through the property, they noticed how quiet the crime scene was. Patrick's house sat on a relatively isolated lot, surrounded by just a few neighbors. A couple of exterior cameras captured fragments of movement, but nothing clear. They found tire tracks in the dirt and a few footprints near the front steps. But there were no broken windows, no signs of robbery, no stolen items. The house was untouched. This wasn't a burglary gone wrong. This was an execution. The medical examiner later confirmed Patrick had died almost instantly. The bullet had been fired at close range with a high-powered rifle, striking directly in the chest. It was precise, clean, cold. Someone had planned this carefully and had known exactly when to strike. Detectives quickly came to a chilling realization. This wasn't random. The killer had known Patrick's schedule, known he'd open that door, and had chosen Valentine's Day, a day meant for love, to end his life. Inside the investigation room, one question echoed over and over. Who would want Patrick dead on this day? The answer would soon unravel a dark story of love, obsession, control, and a premeditated plan to kill, written like a script long before the trigger was ever pulled. Part 2. A dark love triangle. Patrick De La Cerda and Jessica Devnani first met at a friend's party in 2017. Patrick was a young man full of energy, warm, funny, and genuinely caring toward the people he loved. Jessica, at that time, had just stepped out of a painful relationship, but it was Patrick's gentleness and sincerity that helped her open her heart again. Their love grew fast and strong, like a wave that couldn't be stopped. Just a few months later, Patrick got down on one knee and proposed. Jessica said yes through tears, believing she had finally found the man of her life. But what she didn't know was that the past she thought she had left behind was about to become the worst nightmare of her life. Before Patrick, Jessica had been in a long-term relationship with Gregory Bender, a wealthy, intelligent, middle-aged man with a dangerous obsession. Gregory was not the type to accept defeat easily. To him, Jessica was not just a former lover, she was his possession. When Jessica ended the relationship, Gregory refused to let go. He repeatedly reached out, begging, threatening, and even stalking her. He sent long, desperate messages saying he couldn't live without her. And when he found out about Patrick, Gregory snapped. In his mind, Patrick wasn't just another man. He was the thief who stole what belonged to him. For months, Gregory tried to break them apart. He spread lies, made up stories, and even threatened to harm himself if Jessica didn't come back. But Jessica stood firm. She believed Gregory was part of a past she no longer wanted. Patrick knew what was happening, but he chose to stay. He comforted Jessica, stood by her, and tried to shield her from the storm of threats. They believed it would eventually fade away. But Gregory wasn't giving up. Quietly, methodically, he began to watch. Later, investigators discovered that Gregory had contacted Jessica through different numbers, using fake identities to stay close to their lives. He gathered information about Patrick's home, asked neighbors questions, and closely followed both of them on social media. He was building something, a plan, cold and deliberate. Police would also uncover that Gregory legally owned multiple firearms and had a deep fascination with tactical warfare. People who knew him described him as a brilliant man, but dangerous when wounded. And at this point, he was more than wounded. He was consumed, an obsessed man. A love turned into an illness, a mind that couldn't accept losing. All of it was quietly converging into a single, devastating point. As Patrick and Jessica started planning their wedding, Gregory began writing a script of his own. No more desperate calls, no more pleading messages. What he was preparing was a hunt. Part 3. The Silent Hunt. While Patrick and Jessica were busy preparing for their dream wedding, somewhere else, a man was planning his own version of a big day, one built on rage and obsession. Gregory Bender was no longer just a desperate ex. He had crossed into something much darker, a calculated mission of revenge. In the days following Jessica's engagement, Gregory began to move systematically. He purchased additional surveillance equipment, monitored every one of Jessica's social media posts, and mapped out the places she visited. He even approached a few acquaintances to extract information in subtle, manipulative ways. On the surface, Gregory appeared to have accepted the past. He went quiet. He disappeared from Jessica's life. But beneath that silence, a storm was growing. He meticulously recorded details in a notebook, Patrick's routines, schedules, when he left and returned home, who he met, where he went. He focused particularly on Patrick's house in Deltona, Florida, a place Gregory knew Jessica often visited. Later, investigators would find in Gregory's home a thick folder containing a floor plan of Patrick's house, photographs taken from a distance, and even printed Google Maps pages covered with handwritten notes. Every tiny detail had been studied. The location of security cameras, entrances, distance from the main road to the front door, and the times Patrick was usually alone. None of Jessica's friends suspected that someone was stalking their lives so closely. Gregory was careful. He sent no more threatening messages. He never showed up publicly. His silence was his greatest weapon. It lulled Patrick and Jessica into a sense of safety. They truly believed the nightmare was over. But Gregory was only tightening his grip. He practiced different approaches, disguising himself, driving around the neighborhood multiple times, observing at night. His actions were cold and calculated. He wasn't acting out of sudden anger. He was planning. Then came the turning point. One of Jessica's friends happened to notice a familiar car parked not far from Patrick's home one evening in early February 2018. When she mentioned it to Jessica, Jessica felt a chill run down her spine, but quickly brushed it off as a coincidence. She didn't realize that from that exact moment, their lives had quietly stepped into real danger. During this period, Gregory began stockpiling ammunition, body armor, and other equipment. He wrote down the exact time he planned to act, along with backup strategies in case something went wrong. Everything was structured like a military operation. For Patrick and Jessica, this was a season of love and anticipation, just months before their wedding. For Gregory, it was the countdown to a day of reckoning. The man who once loved Jessica had transformed into a cold-blooded hunter, and his one and only target was Patrick. Part 4. The Day That Never Came Back. On the morning of February 14th, 2018, Patrick De La Cerda should have woken up to sweet Valentine's Day messages from his fiancée. Instead, the quiet neighborhood of Deltona, Florida, was shaken by devastating news. Patrick had been shot to death on his own doorstep. It happened in seconds. Patrick got up like any other day, expecting the delivery of an engagement ring, a surprise gift for Jessica. When the doorbell rang, he walked out, unaware that the person waiting outside wasn't a delivery man, but a hunter who had spent months preparing for this very moment. A gunshot echoed. Then more followed. Patrick collapsed on the front steps, never getting the chance to fight back. When police arrived, all they could do was confirm what everyone feared. He was already gone. A cold, deliberate killing, right at the threshold of the home that only hours earlier had been filled with love and anticipation. From the start, investigators knew this wasn't random. The shooter aimed with precision, targeting Patrick's chest and head, just like someone with a carefully rehearsed plan. There were no signs of forced entry, no struggle. The killer knew exactly when Patrick would open the door. That kind of timing only comes from close surveillance or inside knowledge. Jessica was shattered when she heard. She had called Patrick repeatedly, but he didn't answer. When she arrived at the house and saw his lifeless body at the door, she collapsed. A Valentine's Day meant to celebrate love had turned into a day of tragedy, and behind the grief was a burning question. Who would do this? From the beginning, detectives treated it as a targeted execution, not a robbery gone wrong. There were no missing valuables, no chaos inside the house. It was clean, calculated. The investigation quickly narrowed toward people with personal grudges against Patrick, and the first name on the list was no surprise: Gregory Bender. Gregory, Jessica's ex-boyfriend, had sent threatening messages to Patrick before. Jessica had even reported him for stalking and harassment. In the eyes of detectives, he was suspect number one. But there was a catch. At the time of the murder, Gregory claimed to have been home with an alibi backed by his new girlfriend and home security footage. To confirm their suspicions, police needed a solid link. Then they discovered something strange. No one ever saw a delivery person at Patrick's house that morning. A search of the surrounding area turned up a spent bullet casing not far from the scene and tire tracks that didn't match Patrick's vehicle. Further analysis revealed that Patrick's security cameras had been disabled at the exact time of the murder. This was not random. Only someone with technical knowledge and meticulous preparation could have pulled that off so cleanly. As the investigation deepened, every clue began pointing in the same direction. Gregory had the motive. Gregory had the time. Gregory had the skills. But motive alone isn't enough. To convict, detectives needed something undeniable, a piece of evidence he couldn't explain away. And that was exactly what made this case so tense. Because Gregory believed he had built the perfect plan, one that would let him get away with murder. Part 5. Closing in. A few days after the murder, Patrick's house no longer felt like a home. It had become the center of a massive manhunt. Every inch of the property was combed through. Every trace of evidence, no matter how small, was analyzed. One thing was clear to the detectives. This was a premeditated execution, and the killer had intimate knowledge of Patrick's daily routine. The investigation team started reconstructing Patrick's timeline. They gathered data from traffic cameras, neighbors' statements, phone location records, and parcel deliveries on the morning of the murder. One particular detail caught their attention. No delivery for an engagement ring had ever been scheduled that day. The so-called delivery man didn't exist. Meanwhile, the digital forensics unit of Volusia County Sheriff's Office recovered partial security footage from Patrick's system. Just seconds before the cameras went offline, a blurry figure appeared at the gate, a man dressed in black, wearing a baseball cap, standing unnervingly still. His build, posture, and gait bore a striking resemblance to someone familiar: Gregory Bender. Forensics also examined tire tracks found near the driveway. These weren't ordinary car tires. They belonged to a specific SUV model, identical to Gregory's Jeep. When investigators obtained a search warrant for his vehicle, they found mud residue, matching the soil around Patrick's house. But suspicion alone wasn't enough. To bring Gregory down, the detectives needed undeniable evidence. So far, everything was circumstantial, solid, but not handcuffed tight. At the same time, Jessica became a key witness. She told police that Gregory had been obsessively monitoring her life, documenting her daily schedule, following even the shortest trips, refusing to accept the idea of her being with someone else. He had once told her, chillingly, "If I can't have you, no one can." Her testimony gave the case both motive and context, painting the portrait of a dangerously controlling man capable of orchestrating something this cruel. The investigation reached a turning point when detectives executed a search warrant at Gregory's house. Inside his office, they found a small safe. Inside it, multiple firearms, a bulletproof vest, and, most damning of all, a notebook. Its pages were covered in disturbing notes, a sketch of Patrick's property, optimal time windows to strike, and a chilling line, disable cameras before approaching front door. Page by page, it outlined a calculated plan to kill. On Gregory's personal computer, they uncovered months of surveillance photos of Patrick and a detailed journal of his movements. By this point, there was little doubt. Every trail led to Gregory. But Gregory remained unnervingly calm. He denied everything, claiming the weapons were for personal safety, and the notebook was just a harmless collection of random thoughts. His demeanor was cold, confident, as if convinced his plan was flawless. What Gregory didn't know, however, was that one final piece of evidence was already surfacing. And once it did, every layer of his carefully built facade would collapse. Part 6. The net closes in. After weeks of surveillance and forensic work, the picture of the killer finally began to come into sharp focus. But to bring down Gregory Bender, detectives needed a silver bullet, a piece of evidence so strong that even a skilled manipulator couldn't talk his way out of it. They had the motive, they had the blueprint, and they had witness statements. But all of it was still just puzzle pieces, not enough to take down a man as calculating and dangerous as Gregory. The turning point came when the digital forensics unit managed to recover a fragment of data from Patrick's security system, footage that Gregory thought he had erased. A few seconds of video, automatically uploaded to the cloud just before the connection was severed, captured the figure of a man wearing a baseball cap, standing tall, holding what appeared to be a gun. The image was grainy, but the build, the gait, and the way the man moved matched Gregory perfectly. At the same time, detectives received a surprising tip from someone who used to know Gregory. This person told investigators that just days before the murder, Gregory had bragged that everything would be over soon. He had even hinted at a plan to make it look like a robbery. That single statement pushed the task force to request an expanded search warrant. Inside Gregory's house, they found a hard drive that had been wiped clean. But digital forensic experts are not so easily outsmarted. After hours of recovery work, they unearthed a short video clip recorded on Gregory's phone on the day Patrick was killed. It captured the sound of footsteps, the creak of a door opening, and then a gunshot. His face never appeared in the frame, but the tiny details, the shoes, the sound of his car engine, his breathing, the soft muttering of his own voice were an unmistakable match to Gregory Bender. And then came the final blow. Under a bush near the crime scene, investigators found a torn fragment of a glove. Blood on the outside matched Patrick's DNA. Fingerprints on the inside matched Gregory's. Gregory could feel the noose tightening. Detectives brought him in for another interrogation, but this time it wasn't a polite conversation. It was a battle of pressure, patience, and strategy. One by one, they laid the evidence on the table. The camera footage, the recovered hard drive, the DNA on the glove. He tried to keep his calm, but the arrogance in his eyes began to fade. Each piece of evidence cut into the wall he'd built to shield himself, and this time there was no escape. In the end, facing an overwhelming mountain of proof, Gregory Bender was officially arrested and charged with first-degree premeditated murder.